Thank you, Your Highness. May I now invite the President of the European Commission for her remarks, please.
Your Highnesses, Excellencies, it's been 2 years since we launched PGII, a joint vision by the world's leading economies to invest in the infrastructure that low and middle-income countries need. And 2 years on, more large-scale projects are seeing the light, and we are presenting 2 of them today. First, the India-Middle East-Europe Economic Corridor. This is nothing but historic. It will be the most direct connection to date between India, the Arabian Gulf, and Europe, with a rail link that will make trade between India and Europe 40% faster, with an electricity cable and a clean hydrogen pipeline to foster clean energy trade between Asia, the Middle East, and Europe, with a high-speed data cable to link some of the most innovative digital ecosystems in the world and create business opportunities all along the way. These are state-of-the-art connections for the world of tomorrow, faster, shorter, cleaner. This corridor is much more than just a railway or a cable. It is a green and digital bridge across continents and civilizations. And this is also the spirit of the second project we announced today, the Trans-African Corridor, which will connect the port of Lobito in Angola with the Katanga province in DRC and the Copper Belt in Zambia. Our goal is not only to connect a landlocked region to the sea. Our partnership will also invest in local value chains, in clean energy, and in skills for the local workforce. This is the spirit of PGII. It is a whole new approach to large infrastructure investment. It is about shared prosperity. It is about real benefits for all partners. Thank you.
Thank you, Excellency. May I now invite the President of France for his remarks, please.
Thank you so much. Everything was said, so I just want to thank Prime Minister Modi for organizing this meeting and President Biden for sharing this meeting with him. We are committed, and we had several exchanges with my friends Mohammed bin Zayed, and I want to thank you, Your Highness, and Mohammed bin Salman and Narendra Modi on this very important project. So everything was said. So now, with the European Commission, here as European governments, we commit to invest alongside with you on this road, and this is a very important project from Asia through Middle East to Europe to offer big opportunities and connect people. But our intention is as well to make it real and to be sure that after this commitment we have concrete results, and especially to have the first global green trade road, meaning having net zero transport infrastructure, so to be sure that we have the best technologies. We have hydrogen being part of this project, and we channel all the possible common developments. I think as well our intention is to have a fair process. I mean, offering a lot of opportunities to manufacture in the different countries and to cooperate very actively on building these roads, building the innovations going with it, and innovating together. I don't want to be longer. Thank you very much for this. This ceremony is very important. We commit together.
Thank you, Excellency. May I now invite the Chancellor of Germany for his remarks, please.
Thank you, and especially thank you, Narendra and Joe, for convening this event here. I think it is very important to remember that we launched the Partnership for Global Infrastructure and Investment last year. And since then, PGII contributes to closing the global investment gap for quality infrastructure. As Emmanuel Macron already said, most about this initiative and all the activities we speak about today is already said, so I will not repeat it, just mentioning two questions. The first is we have to be active that these things can happen, and this is for me that we then have to also work on the infrastructure, the institutions that can work on financing. And for this, I think it is also important to make the work of the World Bank successful. Germany will contribute an additional 305 million euro of hybrid capital to the World Bank. And this is one of the aspects which is a side of the activity here. We also try to work with Africa, and the compact with Africa will convene in Berlin in November, also as a sign of creating infrastructure, developing economy, all the things we are together here.
Thank you, Excellency. May I now invite the Prime Minister of Japan for his remarks, please.
はい、ありがとうございます。PGII に関するサ
I
イドイベン
welcome
ト
the holding of this side event on partnership for global infrastructure and investment. On the occasion of the G7 Hiroshima Summit in May this year, as the G7 chair, Japan hosted a PGII meeting inviting private businesses for the first time, which was attended by leaders of G7 and partner countries. Japan is delivering various transport infrastructure development projects, including the construction of Delhi Metro here in the city to support economic development of partner countries. Going forward, we want to take this effort a step further to expand the scope of cooperation to wider areas, including supply chains, to link people together by strengthening connectivity. We also intend to work on building industrial value chains in the whole of Bay of Bengal. The Road Network Connectivity Improvement Plan and other northeastern regional development initiatives in India will be organically linked with the Bay of Bengal Industrial Growth Belt Initiative, or a Big B, that we are working on with Bangladesh. Furthermore, the Japan-ASEAN Comprehensive Connectivity Initiative that Japan announced at the ASEAN-related summit meeting will strengthen connectivity in a variety of areas, including transport infrastructure, digital connectivity, maritime cooperation, supply chains, electricity, as well as human and knowledge connectivity. In this way, Japan will continue to lead the effort for tangible implementation of PGII. To do that, partnership with diverse actors who subscribe to its principles is essential. For the promotion of PGII, I call on everyone gathered here once again to work together. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Excellency. May I now invite the Prime Minister of Italy for her remarks.
Your Highnesses, Excellencies, when we launched the Partnership for Global Infrastructure and Investment just over a year ago, we committed to building better infrastructure for better future in low and middle income nations. We committed to cooperate with these nations with an equal, non-predatory approach to create new opportunities and prosperity. Today's launch of the new economic corridor between India and the Middle East and Europe goes precisely in this direction and is a milestone in strengthening global interconnections. And that is why I want to thank Prime Minister Modi, President Biden, and all the others, Ursula von der Leyen and all the others who made it possible. For it's a very important thing. This will scale up our economy's growth, opening enormous potential for mutual will benefit in the business sector. Obviously, Italy is ready to play a decisive role in this process, also through the unique expertise of Italian companies in the maritime and railway sector. And we want to contribute in building bridges between the Mediterranean and the Indo-Pacific, also in the fields of energy and digital connectivity via Africa and the Arabian Gulf. In the energy sector, we can work in different fields, including the production and transport of green hydrogen from the Middle East to the Mediterranean. We also support the European Commission on the Helmet project, a high-voltage submarine electricity interconnection that will link Italy to Tunisia. We are working to strengthen digital connections critical for innovation and growth between the wider Mediterranean and Asia. Lurama, Raman, named after India's Nobel laureate in physics, Raman, will connect Europe with India and involves major companies such as Google and Team Sparkle. However, we also are aware that there's still too much to be done to narrow the infrastructure gap with low and middle income nations, and this is why we will continue work on the Partnership for Global Infrastructure and Investment during the Italian G7 presidency next year. Thank you. Thank you to everybody.
Thank you, Excellency. Thank you, Your Highnesses and Your Excellencies, for launching the landmark India, Middle East, Europe Economic Corridor. I would request all media and officials to remain seated and standing in their places while the leaders depart.
Excuse me for interrupting, but as we say in my body used to work, a point of personal privilege. I did not mention the Sheikh Mohammed of the UAE, but because I knew he wasn't speaking. But I do want to say thank you, thank you, thank you. I don't think we'd be here without you. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Highnesses and Excellencies. I would request all media to remain seated and standing in their position while the leaders leave the room. Thank you.
Zeiss is brave enough not to look only at the eye and the spectacle lens, but it looks at the brain and the human and how it interacts with its surrounding and what it actually needs.
What can you do when the public is accepting this content? You're not able to accuse me of plagiarism, which is your standard go-to trope, because I'm an IP lawyer by practice. Come after me and I'll rip you apart. On content, I'm saying I'm not claiming expertise here. I am standing on the shoulders of giants. I'm doing what any scientific publication would do, which is citation, 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 900 footnotes and endnotes. Deal with it. The existence of Hinduism in the current day is predicated on Hindutva being kept alive. If Hinduism were living in peacetime, Hindutva will sleep. But if that's not the case, Hindutva has to stand up. It is the Kshatriya aspect of Hinduism. The speed with which the community reacted to the Pathan controversy is not the speed with which it reacts on freedom of temples from the state. We read the history of Wahhabism as if it's in a separate silo when it comes to the Middle East, but we don't wish to talk about what happened parallelly in Bharat. All the Wahhabis were Sufis. So it's very difficult for me to buy this Bollywood presented invention that when you think of Sufi, think of these dervishes with the long hats and the long robes just whirling around constantly in ecstasy. Every time an Indian cricketer celebrates a Hindu festival, just go through the comments and the hate mail that he receives. I don't blame the Muslim community leaders or the founders of Pakistan for what they did, because they did what according to them was divinely ordained. I blame the Hindus for not doing enough and for not standing by their culture. We are the ones buried under these degrees of coloniality where we find it so difficult to unabashedly represent our own position, stand by our own culture. That's the problem. This pacifism is the consequence of the moderate spirit introduced into Indian public discourse by the creation of this entity called the Congress.
Namaste, Jai Hind. Welcome to another edition of ANI Podcast with Smita Prakash. Many of you have written in to request us to get some domain specialists to our Delhi studios for the podcast. We do try our best to accommodate as many requests as possible. I'm not really a fan of Zoom interviews. It reminds me of the COVID era, and hence all our guests are those who come to our Delhi studios. Today I speak with J. Sai Deepak, engineer turned litigator turned author. His two books, India, that is Bharat, Coloniality, Civilization, Constitution, and India, Bharat and Pakistan, The Constitutional Journey of a Sandwich Civilization, are two voluminous, well-researched books on the Indian civilization. His views are hugely popular among a cross-section of the Indian population, which believes that the way Indians have read and perceived history of its own civilization is through the prism of their colonial masters. That Indians constantly seek validation. On the other hand, some historians feel that Sai Deepak and some other historians are whitewashing history through an unnecessary debate of native versus colonial prism. Thank you so much for coming to our studios, Sai. Before this, just for our viewers, before the podcast begins, I just want to tell you that off camera, I asked him, I said, how should I address you? Because, I've seen some of your videos and some call you J Sai, some call you Sai, some call you Sai Deepak. So I said, okay, how do I refer to you? So then you've been kind enough that I can take your first name and refer to you as Sai. I wanted to have you long back on the podcast because almost every podcast that I have done, 25 of them, in the comment section, it's always, ma'am, can you please have J. Sai Deepak? Ma'am, can you please have J. Sai Deepak? I said, look, I'm going to have him, but only after I've read your book, because I'm a little bit finicky about such things that I need to read the book and get to know, what your point of view is. And you make very compelling arguments, if I may say, Sai. It's very hard to completely disagree with you because you speak and your theory, your arguments are very sound, if I may say so. Let's begin with this book, especially India, Bharat and Pakistan. So, while reading this, as you know, I had Vikram Sampath here. There's this whole host of books which have come out by Indic historians. Some say that it's just too much too soon. Do you think that's the case?
So first of all, thank you for having me over. I'm happy that someone's at least asked me how do you wish to be addressed, and they've got my name right. So thank you so much.
Okay.
I think your podcast with Vikram was fabulous. Vikram, of course, is brilliant at his subject, and I would say he certainly he fits the definition of a true blue Indic historian, and he's taking forward the legacy of people like Dr. Meenakshi Jain and others in a very brilliant way. And I think people like Vikram and people of this generation, fortunately, we have the social media positional advantage, which the previous generation did not have. And since there were gatekeepers of scholarship around that particular generation, the others weren't able to break through that let's say, that iron fort. Fortunately, I think that bastion has now been broken into. Now, to respond to your question, I think the pace at which narratives are being set up, citing, I would say, distorted history. Ever since what I would call the tectonic year 2019, with multiple developments back to back, August 5th, then you had the CAA, then you had the Ayodhya judgment, then you had the status quo order in Sabarimala case and whatnot. So much going on that the central issue in one way or the other was always about the identity of this country. Its fundamental parichay. And therefore, I think it was imperative for these works to come out in quick succession, putting out multiple perspectives. Allow me to say this without an iota of false modesty. I'm certainly nowhere in the same league as Mr. Sanjeev Sanyal or Vikram Sampath or any of these people, because they're brilliant at their own subjects. For instance, Mr. Sanyal, who's just come out with his brilliant book on revolutionaries of Bharat, who's great at economics and history. I am approaching this more from the perspective of a practicing advocate, trying to understand the underlying mentality in my own profession and our own approach to issues such as secularism, constitutional morality, so on and so forth. So I genuinely believe that these discussions are timely and very, very relevant. I hope there are more voices that come out sooner, because I think after a point, people might get jaded with the same set of voices and the same set of faces. they'll say, okay, we have heard his position. Abhi aur kitna sunna hai? What more does he have to contribute? Right? So that shouldn't happen. So the fatigue with respect to a particular phase or a set of phases mustn't translate to fatigue with respect to the content of the perspective. So we need more voices. So I hope that the next few years, at least 3 or 4 years, we see more and more people coming to the fore who are able to take some of the seeds or Easter eggs that we have sown in each of these books, take it forward, dig deeper, and then come out with their own views on it. So I'd say, no, this is certainly not too soon or too much too soon. I'd say this is the right amount, and perhaps we may even need more.
Okay, I'm going to read out some extracts during the course of this podcast, stuff that I found interesting. And viewers, you must buy this book. There'll be many things that you might find more interesting than I did. But I'm going to take out some. You say, Sai, that history, and I quote, history tends to reward those with long collective memory. And you write in this book, I'm going to go to this Bharatiya mind, which you talk about.
Right.
It's on page 9 for those of you who want to see it. You say this, that in the absence of this big picture, the Bharatiya mind, which is currently buried deep under 3 layers of coloniality, European, Middle Eastern and Nehruvian Marxist post-colonial, will continue to consume popular, comforting and infantile fictions. I want you to elaborate on this infantile fiction. One such fiction which you mention is the existence of the Ganga Jamuni Tehzeeb, the much touted composite cultural creature that is the supposed product of a syncretic relationship between Hinduism and Islam, creating the so-called unique Indian Islam. Now, generations of Indians have grown up on this, listening to this, that how lucky we are as Indians to have this Ganga Jamuni Tehzeeb. Now you come with this very uncomfortable truth, which tries to shatter, I don't know whether it has shattered or not, this fiction which you call.
Right.
So please explain to me what this is about.
So during the course of my research for this book, I went through a huge learning curve. My preconceived notions about the so-called independent movement around that particular period, its leaders, everything changed. The first thing that I realized is that this composite creature called the Ganga Jamuni Tehzeeb is a relatively new construct in our public discourse, and which can at best be traced to the period between 1916 and 1923, and not before nor after. Because you see, until 1916, this much was very clear, that while the Congress of that particular period wanted to project itself as the big tent of all sorts of ideas, as long as it was, let's say, seeking some kind of a home rule or autonomous governance for Indians, staying within the realm of, let's say, the empire, the colonial empire, so to speak, the Muslim identity was crystal clear. I'd say largely clear, that I don't think the twain can meet. And one of the foremost persons to make this point was Sir Syed Ahmad, because most people assume that it is the creation of the Congress which led to his own views on the two-nation theory. But the fact of the matter is, those views preceded the creation of the Congress by at least 50 years, thanks to his own education in certain seminaries. I've mentioned all those facts. Second, 1924 also turned out to be one of those years which translated into severe introspection on the part of several Indian leaders, because they realized that in the process of supporting the Khilafat movement, and the non-cooperation effectively was meant to further the cause of Khilafat, it was not meant for Indian independence. That much is very clear. Nobody can make that statement whatsoever, because I've quoted Congress proceedings, I've quoted Muslim League proceedings. This is a myth that needs to be busted, and I think I've done that. When you see that, two things happened. One set of leaders from within the Congress effectively realized that they had created a dragon, which was going to be difficult to rein in. And this dragon always, or rather they hadn't created a dragon, they had revived a dragon.
What is this dragon?
This is the dragon that believes in the two-nation theory.
Oh, okay.
This is the dragon that led to the creation of Pakistan, which was always waiting for an opportunity to present itself, to reassert itself, so that the Persham can be, let's say, resuscitated, so to speak, in Bharat. And the Khilafat movement, coupled with the cooperation of the Congress under Gandhi, or even before that by Tilak and others, had given them that opportunity. From 24 to 46, you're looking at the movement towards the creation of Pakistan and the crystallization of the idea of Pakistan and the reality of Pakistan. I would only ask, what Ganga Jamni Tehzeeb? That's one. Because by 1946, the elections make it abundantly clear that the majority of the Muslim population had voted for the creation of Pakistan. And therefore, everybody who chose to stayed back for reasons of pragmatism and practicality, but not for patriotism, is a position I've already taken. Because you've already cast your ballot at, let's say you vote at the ballot, clearly with respect to a particular idea and its fructification. So, can there be a clearer statement of intent and position? I don't think so. That's one. Now, I would then say that post-independence, the deification of this particular composite creature must be laid at the doors of the distortion of history, helmed under Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru and the Marxist Nehruvian coterie of historians that he put together, which actively sidelined people like R.C. Majumdar and others. And then also to this particular cabal, I would call the IPTA, the theatre movement.
IPTA, yes.
IPTA, which had a lot of Marxist Muslims. I think Mr. Kaifi Azmi was also part of this, and Balraj Sahani and all these people are part of it. And then I think Bollywood starts playing a huge role in creating this. So we are told that Muhammad Rafi sang bhajans, and then we are told that Naushad set music for some of these bhajans, and that...
They did, no?
Of course they did. I'd say I'm not going to let a bhajan effectively come in the way of my larger picture of what happened in history. That is something I'm not going to buy that.
Sir, if I may interrupt, you said it's in the 20th century, right?
Right.
That this Ganga Jamuni Tehzeeb,
Correct.
and there's no reference earlier, maybe not the term.
Right.
But tell me, the sentiment didn't agree. Suppose it didn't exist. Suppose we were to just look back at, say, Akbar and Deen-e-Ilahi.
Right.
You've written about that in your book. You've gone into great depths about that.
Right.
But I'm just asking you, because most people who've grown up think that, okay, there was this syncretic culture which was there, especially in the Ganga area.
Right. The problem is, whenever we choose to examine or unpack these issues, I think somewhere the examination for causality goes for a toss. So let me do a typical analysis here in terms of what is the cause and what is the effect. This much is clear, that there have been multiple waves of Islamization of the converted Muslim population from the Hindu population. So until that particular process of Islamization is complete, the converted Muslim who was previously a Hindu continues to hold on to his cultural roots and religious roots in one way or the other, because he is not able to let go of the religion of his ancestors. Now, this is sought to be presented as the accommodative facet or aspect of Islam, which is not the case, because you have to go a few years forward and then you realize the next wave of Islamization removes even those vestiges. And that is what we see as Wahhabization. I'm sorry, it's not Wahhabization. It's the complete Islamization of the convert. Because we don't understand Wahhabism the way it is supposed to be. We see it as some kind of an extreme tangent of Islam, which is not the case. It has a significant following in this country. It has perhaps a greater following in this country, at least since the 19th century, than in Arabia. We don't wish to talk about it. That's a different issue. Okay, so that's one. Two, Dr. Ambedkar specifically says as much in his book, Pakistan and the Partition of India. Let me say this for the sake of public record, that I have serious and several disagreements with Dr. Ambedkar. But I think on some of those issues where I think I may end up agreeing with him, is his reading of this mindset, the Islamic mindset and the origins of two-nation theory, where he doesn't beat around the bush at all. So a lot of people who wish to quote him for multiple reasons somehow don't want to quote him for his views on Islam. They must read it. And there he is very clear that this composite creature is effectively the residual product of incomplete conversion of the Hindu to Islam. That is his clear analysis. It makes abundant sense. Clearly, lighting of a lamp or breaking of a coconut hasn't come from Islam. These are native traditions which some people are finding it difficult to let go of. But with every wave of Islamization and further Wahhabization, or Wahhabization and hence Islamization, that wave goes. I'll give you an example from my own part of the country. In Hyderabad, there was a point where perhaps the burqa was common, but the hijab wasn't.